Good evening, my friends. Come sit down and make yourself comfortable. Tonight, I want to share with you a story that still gives me chills, even after all these decades. You see, back in 1967, when I was just a young journalist of 25, I was assigned to investigate a rather peculiar case on the remote Beacon Island off the coast of Maine. The lighthouse there had been automated for 3 years, but the local fishermen kept reporting strange lights, not the regular beacon, mind you, but irregular flashes that seemed to spell out messages that made no sense. The Coast Guard dismissed it as equipment malfunction, but I had a feeling there was more to this story. I took the supply boat that visited the island monthly. Captain Morrison, a weathered man who'd been making that run for 20 years, seemed unusually quiet as we approached the island. "Strange things been happening there, son," he told me, his knuckles white as he gripped the wheel. "Been happening since old Thomas disappeared." Thomas Whitmore had been the last lighthouse keeper before automation. He'd lived on that island for 15 years, alone, except for his monthly supply deliveries. When the automation came, he simply vanished. His personal belongings were still there. His coffee cup still sat on the kitchen table, but Thomas was nowhere to be found. As I climbed the lighthouse stairs, each step creaking ominously under my feet, I noticed something the Coast Guard had missed: scratches on the walls. Not random scratches, but deliberate marks, lines and dashes. It looked almost like Morse code. The markings began about halfway up the staircase and continued all the way to the top. They were carved deep into the stone, as if someone had desperately tried to leave a message. Some were fresh, others older and weathered. It was as if Thomas had been carving these messages for months, maybe years. I spent hours deciphering those marks. My Morse code knowledge was limited, but I had a small manual in my equipment. What I found made my blood run cold. The message was simple, repeated over and over. "They come at night, they come from the deep. Thomas knows." But that wasn't all. The higher I climbed, the more desperate the messages became. "Can't stop hearing them, they call my name. I forget who I was." The last message, right at the top by the beacon, was the most disturbing. "I am no longer Thomas. Warn the others." When I finally reached the top of the lighthouse, I found something else: a logbook, Thomas's personal diary. The first entries were normal: weather observations, ship traffic, maintenance work. But starting in the fall of 1964, the tone changed dramatically. October 15th, 1964. They're back. The lights. They move differently than anything I've ever seen, as if they have purpose, intelligence. November 3rd, 1964. I can hear their songs even when I cover my ears. They sing of old times, of cities beneath the sea, of a time when they ruled the oceans. December 21st, 1964. I go to the water at night. I can't help myself. It's like something calls to me. My skin is changing. It glows in the moonlight. The entries became increasingly incoherent, the handwriting more illegible. Thomas described how he was changing, how his skin was becoming different, how he could breathe underwater, how the creatures from the depths showed him visions of another world. The last entry was from March 1st, 1967, just weeks before my arrival. "They have shown me the truth. Humanity is not alone on this planet. Beneath the seas exists a civilization older than anything we can imagine. They are awakening from a millennia-long slumber, and they need messengers on the surface. I will become one of them, but I will try to warn others as long as something human remains in me." As dusk fell over the island, I understood why the fishermen were frightened. As darkness settled in, I saw them. Lights moving beneath the water. Not boats, nothing mechanical. These lights pulsed with an organic rhythm, like enormous jellyfish, but they moved with purpose, intelligence. At first it was just individual points of light blinking in the depths. Then there were more, Dozens, hundreds of lights, forming complex patterns beneath the water's surface. They moved in formation, as if following a plan, an ancient choreography. I grabbed my camera and flashlight, determined to document whatever was happening. But when I took the first photograph, two things happened simultaneously. The flash of my camera seemed to alert the creatures underwater. Their lights became brighter and began moving faster. And from the distance, from the sea, I heard something that made me freeze in terror. Singing. A low, haunting melody that seemed to come from the water itself. It wasn't human, yet it had a beauty that almost hypnotized me. The melody was old, older than any music I'd ever heard. It spoke of deep waters, forgotten cities, of a time when the boundaries between land and sea didn't exist. Against my own will, I found myself walking toward the shoreline. My feet moved of their own accord over the smooth, salt-polished rocks. The melody grew louder, more insistent. I felt it penetrating my consciousness, drowning out my own thoughts. That's when I saw him, Thomas Whitmore. But something was wrong. He stood knee-deep in the frigid water, completely motionless, his eyes reflecting the lighthouse beam like mirrors. He was singing, or rather, singing along. His voice joined with the voices from the depths in a harmony that was both beautiful and terrible. Thomas looked like the man in the lighthouse photographs, but completely different at the same time. His skin had a strange, pearl-like glow in the moonlight. His movements had become more fluid, almost serpentine, and his eyes had taken on the depth of the ocean itself. "Thomas!" I called out, but he didn't respond. He just kept singing that haunting melody. I waded into the water, the salt water soaking through my boots and pants. The water was colder than anything I'd ever felt, yet at the same time it felt alive, as if it were pulsing, as if it had its own heartbeat. The closer I got to Thomas, the more details I could see of his transformation. His skin didn't just have a pearl-like glow, it actually showed fine, scale-like patterns. His fingers had grown longer, and between them I could see the hint of webbing. His clothing, once the practical uniform of a lighthouse keeper, now hung torn and salt-encrusted on his changed body. I hesitantly reached out to touch his shoulder. The moment my hand made contact, several things happened at once. The singing stopped abruptly. The lights beneath the water vanished instantly, as if retreating into the depths, and Thomas slowly turned to face me. When I looked into his eyes, I saw for the first time since his transformation a spark of human recognition, terror, desperation, and something even worse, relief. As if he had awakened from a nightmare for a brief moment, only to realize that the nightmare was his new reality. "You must leave," he whispered in a voice that was both his own and completely foreign. It was like he was speaking through water. "Tonight, immediately, before they realize you've seen me. They don't tolerate witnesses." His words came in bursts, as if he had to fight against something in his own head to get them out. "They have changed me, slowly, over years. Every evening they call me into the water, and every night I lose a piece of my humanity, my memories, my feelings. They're being replaced by something else." He told me hastily about the creatures, beings that had existed since the first fish populated the oceans. They had built civilizations beneath the sea, cities of coral and living tissue. For eons they had slept, but something had awakened them. Ocean pollution, atomic tests, changed sea currents. The modern world had disturbed their millennia-long slumber. "They're preparing for a return," Thomas said, tears streaming down his partially transformed face. "But they need messengers on the surface, humans who will work for them, who will advance their plans. I was the first, but I won't be the last." He explained how the lighthouse's strange light signals weren't malfunctions, but his desperate attempts to warn ships. Every time he regained control of his own body, he used those few minutes to send messages. But each day, it became harder. The human part of him grew smaller. "They showed me their cities," Thomas whispered, Structures as large as mountains grown from living reef, libraries of crystallized memories, gardens full of creatures that cultivate light itself. It's beautiful and terrible at the same time, and they want the oceans to belong to them again. Suddenly Thomas's body stiffened, his eyes widened in terror. "They're coming back," he gasped. "They've sensed that I'm talking to you. You must go now, immediately." In the distance, I could see the lights rising again, brighter and more aggressive than before. The singing began anew, this time not melodic and hypnotic, but shrill and demanding. Thomas's face contorted in pain as he fought against the control these beings exercised over him. "Every night they call me deeper out," he said with final effort, "and every night I lose more of myself. Soon there will be nothing human left, but tonight I fought back long enough to warn you. Tell the world what happened here. Tell them about Thomas Whitmore, who sacrificed his life to save others." I didn't wait to hear more. I radioed Captain Morrison on his emergency frequency, and that old sailor, bless his soul, came back for me in the middle of the night through a growing storm. As we pulled away from the island, I looked back to see Thomas walking deeper into the water, the bioluminescent lights welcoming him home. The official report stated that I found no evidence of Thomas Whitmore on the island. The lighthouse was functioning normally, case closed, but I know what I saw. And sometimes, on very dark nights when I'm near the ocean, I can still hear that haunting melody carried on the wind. The lighthouse was eventually demolished in 1975. They said the foundation was unstable, but I think they wanted to make sure nothing could call ships to that place ever again. Thomas Whitmore saved countless lives by becoming something else. Sometimes, my friends, the greatest heroism comes from the deepest sacrifice.